Once upon a time, not far from golden fields and rolling green hills, there lived an old donkey named Henry. Henry had worked hard all his life. He had carried heavy sacks of wheat for a farmer, helped pull carts, and even given rides to the farmer's grandchildren. But now, his legs were slower, his back was sore, and the farmer no longer called for him. One morning, Henry overheard the farmer saying, "That donkey is too old. He's no use to me anymore." Henry's ears drooped. His heart sank. But then, he had an idea. "If I'm too old to work," he said to himself, "then I'll do something new. I'll become a musician." You see, Henry had always loved music. He loved the chirping of birds, the breeze through the trees, and the jingling bells on the children's bikes. He even liked to bray along when the wind whistled past the barn. "I'll go to the town of Bremen," he said. "They say musicians play in the streets, and no one cares how old you are if you can make good music." And so, Henry packed a small satchel with apples, a blanket, and a shiny tin bell that used to hang on his bridle. He tied it to his neck, gave one long bray, hee-haw, and set off down the dusty road. As Henry trotted along, the sun shone warmly, and butterflies danced beside him. It wasn't long before he spotted a sad-looking dog sitting by the side of the road. The dog, with floppy ears and kind eyes, let out a heavy sigh. "Why so glum?" asked Henry, stopping beside him. "I used to be the best hunting dog in the village," said the dog. "But now I'm slow and my bark is soft. My master said he doesn't need me anymore." Henry's heart filled with sympathy. "What's your name?" "Buster." "Well, Buster, I'm on my way to Bremen to become a musician. I may be old, but I've got a voice. Wanna come with me? We could be a duo." Buster wagged his tail for the first time in days. "You play music?" he asked. "I bray beautifully," said Henry with a grin. Buster stood up, stretched, and barked. "And I howl in harmony." And so, the two friends walked side by side, a donkey with a bell and a dog with a song. As the sun dipped lower, they reached a grove of trees, where they decided to rest. Buster curled up under a tree, and Henry munched on apples while jingling his bell softly. "We're not useless," Henry said. "We're just ready for something new." And with that thought, they drifted into dreams. Dreams of Bremen, of music, of crowds clapping and dancing to their songs. Little did they know, their journey had just begun, and more friends were waiting to join the band. The next morning, Henry and Buster woke up to golden sunlight peeking through the trees. Buster gave a big yawn and stretched his legs. "Do you think Bremen has sausages?" he asked. Henry chuckled. "Bremen has everything: music, food, and maybe even a stage." They followed a winding path through the forest, birds chirping above their heads. Henry's bell jingled with each step, and Buster added the occasional bark hum. After a while, they came to a small farm with a broken fence and a crooked chicken coop. Perched on top of the coop, flapping his wings and puffing his feathers, was a bright red rooster. He was trying to crow, but it came out more like a squeaky hiccup. "Cock-a-hick-doodle-ack," he tried again. Henry and Buster exchanged a look. "Well," said Henry kindly, "he's got enthusiasm. Let's say hi," said Buster. They approached the rooster carefully. "Excuse us," Henry called. "Are you okay up there?" The rooster blinked, surprised. "Who's asking?" "I'm Henry, and this is Buster. We're on our way to Bremen to become musicians." "Musicians?" The rooster tilted his head. "Can you sing?" "I bray," said Henry proudly. "I howl," added Buster. The rooster ruffled his feathers and looked down at them. "Name's Rudy. I used to be the best wake-up crow in the whole county. Every morning like clockwork cock-a-doodle, do. But now," he sighed, "my voice is rusty, And the farmer said I'm too loud, too annoying. He's planning to put me in a pot, Henry gasped. That's terrible. No one deserves that, Buster growled softly. Rudy flapped down from the coop and landed with a flutter. I always wanted to sing something besides morning calls, he said. Something jazzy, maybe. Well, Rudy, said Henry with a grin. What if I told you that in Bremen, we're forming the finest animal band the world has ever seen? We've got rhythm, heart, and lots of feet to stomp along, added Buster. Rudy's eyes lit up. Could I really join? Only if you promise to try one jazzy note, Henry teased. Rudy took a deep breath, puffed up his chest, and let out the most dramatic sound he could muster. Cock-a-doodle Scooby-Doo? Henry and Buster burst into laughter and applause. You're in the band, said Henry. And so the three of them set off together, the donkey with a bell, the dog with a beat, and the rooster with jazz in his heart. They made quite the team. Henry kept the rhythm with his hooves, Buster barked backup, and Rudy practiced new notes on every fence post they passed. As they walked, they imagined the crowd and Bremen children dancing, grown-ups clapping, coins tossed into a hat. But far up the trail, in the shadows of the forest, another lonely animal was about to cross their path. The sun was warm, and the road was long, but the band of animal friends didn't mind. Henry clopped along proudly. Buster trotted with a bounce in his step, and Rudy perched on Henry's back, practicing silly jazz notes like cock-a-rumba and doodle-dee-doo. They were making their way toward Bremen, laughing, singing, and dreaming of music. As they passed a bend in the road near a pile of old stones, Henry's ears twitched. He stopped suddenly. Did you hear that? He asked. Everyone froze. There it was again, a tiny sound, almost like a meow, but softer, sadder. Over there! Rudy flapped down and pointed with his wing to the base of a tree. Curled up in the shade was a small gray cat, with silky fur, gentle green eyes, and the tiniest tear on her whiskered cheek. Are you okay? Buster asked softly. The cat sat up and blinked slowly. Oh, hello, she said in a quiet voice. I didn't hear you come. We're going to Bremen, Rudy said brightly. To become musicians. We're a band, added Henry. A donkey, a dog, a rooster, and maybe a cat? The cat gave a small, polite smile. I'm called Lila. I used to curl on soft pillows and hum lullabies for my old lady. She said I had the softest purr in the world, but now she's moved away, and the new people don't like me. They say I'm lazy. Lazy? Buster said. You're clearly talented. Lila stood up, stretched her back, and gave a long, graceful yawn. Well, I do have a lovely voice. I used to sing to the moon. Henry nodded. Would you sing to us now? Lila blinked. I'm not used to singing with a crowd. Rudy leaned close. That's okay. Not very used to anything. Lila took a deep breath. And then, in the gentlest voice they had ever heard, she sang, meow. Let the night be soft and slow. The forest seemed to go quiet. Even the wind paused to listen. When she finished, everyone just stared. That, said Buster at last, was beautiful. You're joining the band, Henry said, smiling wide. Will there be naps? Lila asked. Plenty, said Rudy, but only between rehearsals. And so the band had four. A donkey who brayed the beat, a dog who barked backup, a rooster who riffed with jazz, and a cat who could soothe the stars. As the sun began to set, the group walked on humming, talking, and laughing. But just ahead, the woods grew darker, and soon, the road would disappear into shadow. The musicians had no idea that real adventure was waiting just around the bend. The sun slipped behind the trees, and the golden sky turned purple, then deep blue. The forest around the four musicians grew quiet. Even the birds stopped singing. Henry glanced back at his friends. "Should we stop here for the night?" Buster sniffed the air. "Smells like pine needles and mushrooms." "I vote yes," said Rudy, fluttering down to a tree stump. "My wings need a rest." Lila stretched and purred. "As long as we don't sleep near squirrels, they chatter all night." They found a soft patch of moss beneath a large tree and settled down together. Henry laid his blanket, Rudy tucked his beak under his wing, and Lila curled into a purring ball on Henry's back. But Buster couldn't sleep. The trees creaked. The wind whispered strange things, and somewhere, far off, he thought he heard footsteps. "Did anyone else hear that?" he whispered. Henry lifted his head. "Hear what?" Crunch. This time, they all heard it. Something or someone was moving nearby. Rudy peeked over a rock. "Probably just a raccoon," he whispered. Lila's tail twitched. "Or a sneaky fox." Buster's fur bristled. "Or something worse." The four animals huddled together. The sounds grew louder: step, crunch, creak. Suddenly, a shadow moved between the trees. Then another. Then laughter. Rough, mean laughter. Henry's ears perked up. Someone's out there. Through the trees, they saw a small, flickering light, like a fire. Carefully, the animals crept closer. They reached the edge of a clearing and peeked through the bushes. What they saw made all four gasp at once. There, in a ragged old cottage with a broken roof, sat three scruffy men. They wore muddy boots, had wild hair, and were laughing with mouths full of crumbs. One slammed his fist on the table. "Another pie and more gold tomorrow!" Another twirled a rusty key. "They'll never find us in this old place. We're kings of the forest now." The third one slurped soup and kicked a sack of coins under the table. Lila's eyes went wide. "They're robbers!" Henry nodded. "And this must be their hideout," Buster whispered. "We should leave. Now." But Rudy fluffed his feathers. "Wait a second. What if we scare them off?" "Us?" Buster blinked. "We're musicians." "Exactly," said Rudy with a grin. "Let's put on a performance." Henry smiled slowly. "I like where this is going." Lila lifted her head. "You want to sing the robbers out of the house?" "Not just sing," said Rudy. "Let's give them the wildest concert they've ever heard." They huddled together, forming a plan their first real performance. Under the moonlight, and in front of the worst audience in the forest. And none of them knew it yet, but this would be the night the world would first hear. The musicians of Bremen. The moon climbed high into the night sky, casting silver light across the trees. In the clearing, the robbers laughed louder, unaware that something unusual was creeping their way. Behind the cottage, four unlikely musicians were getting into position. "Everyone remember the plan?" whispered Henry. "Of course," said Rudy. "I flap, Buster barks, Lila screeches, and you bray your heart out." "I don't screech," Lila sniffed. "I project dramatically." "Call it what you want," Buster muttered. "Just be loud." They stacked themselves carefully near the window, Henry on the bottom, then Buster on his back, then Lila, and Rudy fluttered up to the top, balancing with his wings. Henry took a deep breath. "Ready?" "Ready," they whispered in unison. "And then shout 'em, all at once." They burst out their most outrageous sounds. "Hee-haw! Woof, woof, woof! Meow! Cock-a-jazz-a-doodle-doo!" The noise exploded into the cottage like thunder. Inside, the three robbers leapt from their chairs, knocking over their stew and flinging their gold in the air. "What was that?" cried the first robber, diving under the table. "A monster, "A ghost band, demon parade," shouted the second. "I saw glowing eyes," howled the third. "They're on the roof. They're on the wall." In a frenzy of fear, the robbers grabbed their coats, tripped over one another, and bolted out the door, screaming into the night and vanishing into the woods. Silence fell. The four animals blinked. Did it work?" Lila asked softly. Henry climbed down and peeked through the open door. "They're gone! They're really gone!" Buster barked. Rudy swooped down from the window and landed with a flutter. "We did it! Our first concert was a smash!" The friends cautiously entered the cottage. Inside, the fireplace crackled warmly. There was a big table with half-eaten pies, fresh bread, and cheese. Blankets lay on wooden beds, and lanterns flickered on the shelves. "This place is kind of cozy," said Lila, hopping onto a cushioned chair. "And safe," said Henry. "At least for the night. And best of all," Rudy grinned, pointing to the steaming pot of stew, "we've got dinner." They laughed, they ate, and they celebrated like true musicians after a big show. Henry even tapped his hooves on the wooden floor, while Rudy hummed a melody and Leela purred a rhythm. "We should name our band," said Buster between bites. "How about the Midnight Howlers?" Rudy offered. "Or Four Friends and a Song," said Lila. Henry chuckled. "We'll think of something. We've got time." Outside, the forest was quiet. But the animals didn't feel afraid anymore. They had stood up to danger not with claws or teeth, but with music, courage, and a little bit of silliness. And tomorrow, they would continue their journey to Bremen. But tonight, they had a warm roof, good food, and each other. Their adventure had already become more than a trip to a town. It had become a story worth singing about. The morning sun peeked through the cracks in the wooden walls of the cottage. A soft breeze rustled the trees, and birds chirped cheerful morning songs. Inside, the four animals were just waking up. Henry stretched his legs and blinked. "That was the best sleep I've had in years." Buster rolled over on a rug near the fire. "This place is warm, and doesn't smell like hay." Rudy was already perched on a beam near the ceiling, humming to himself. "I'm inspired. I think I'm going to write a song called The Wild Night Symphony." Lila let out a long, cozy purr from her seat on the windowsill. "Call it Four Friends and a Fleeing Robber. I like the drama." They all laughed. After a quick breakfast of leftover bread and cheese, they stepped outside to enjoy the crisp morning air. The forest, which once felt dark and scary, now looked friendly and full of life. Henry looked at the cozy cottage, the soft moss around it, the tall trees waving gently above. "You know," he said thoughtfully, "we were going to Bremen to find a new life, but maybe this is it." Buster tilted his head. "What do you mean?" "Well," Henry said, "we've got a safe home. We have music, food, and most importantly, we have each other." Rudy fluttered down beside him. "But Bremen has crowds and big stages and maybe lots of people who don't listen," interrupted Lila gently. "Here, the trees always clap." They stood in silence for a moment. Then Buster wagged his tail. "We could still be musicians, but forest musicians. We could play for squirrels," Rudy added. "And raccoons," said Henry. "And the moon," whispered Lila. That settled it. The four friends decided to stay in the cottage at least for now, but they wouldn't stop being musicians. Not at all. They cleaned up the old house together. Henry pulled weeds from the path. Buster fixed a broken shutter. Rudy dusted cobwebs, with lots of sneezing. And Lila supervised gracefully. By evening, the place looked lovely. They lit lanterns, set out fresh leaves and flowers, and made soft straw beds in every corner. That night, they held their very first official forest concert. Henry kept the beat with his hooves. Buster howled a jazzy tune. Rudy flapped and sang a wild melody. And Lila purred a soft, dreamy harmony. Fireflies danced in the air like tiny lights. An owl hooted in applause. Even a curious deer stopped by to listen. When the song ended, the animals sat quietly for a moment, breathing in the night. "We may never be famous," said Henry, "but I've never felt more like a real musician." "Or more at home," Buster said. "Or more me," whispered Lila. "Same," said Rudy. "Same, same, same." And so, in a forest that once felt cold and strange, the musicians of Bremen found something even better than applause. They found belonging. But little did they know, the forest still had surprises waiting. It was a peaceful afternoon in the forest. Sunlight streamed through the trees, and a soft breeze carried the sound of music drifting from the little cottage. Henry was outside, sweeping leaves into neat piles. Buster was napping in a sunspot. Lila was lounging in a windowsill, blinking slowly. And Rudy? Rudy was writing lyrics on a leaf with a twig dipped in berry juice. Suddenly, from the woods came a sound: rustle, rustle, snap! Henry looked up. "Did you hear that?" Lila flicked an ear. "Someone's coming." The bushes near the path trembled, and out popped a young, wide-eyed fox with oversized ears, a fluffy tail, and a backpack almost as big as he was. "Whoa!" the fox gasped. "It's true. It's really true. The forest musicians are real." Buster sat up. What now?" The fox scrambled forward, nearly tripping over his own tail. "I heard about you in the village. Animals say you scared off robbers with music, fixed up an old house, and made songs under the stars." Henry blinked. We did all those things. Yes. "My name's Finley," the fox said, grinning. "I'm learning to play the forest horn. It's made from an old pine cone and a hollow stick. Wanna see?" He pulled a strange little instrument from his bag and blew into it. Phew! A few birds flew away. A squirrel fell out of a branch. "Impressive," Lila said, with a soft smile. "I've been practicing," Finley said proudly. "And I want to join your band." Rudy fluttered down from his perch. "Well, we are always open to new sounds." "Do you have rhythm?" Henry asked. Finley wagged his tail. "I can drum on tree trunks with my paws." "Do you sing?" Buster asked. "Only in the shower," the fox replied. Lila raised an eyebrow. "Do foxes have showers?" "Only during rainstorms," Finley said cheerfully. The animals laughed. "All right, Finley," Henry said. "You can hang out with us, but every band member must help with music and chores." "Deal," said the fox. "I'm great at organizing berries, and I know how to polish stones." That evening, with Finley's pine cone horn added to the mix, the band played a bouncy new song called "Foxtrot in the Ferns." More animals came from the forest to listen. A shy badger, a hedgehog family, 2 dancing frogs. Lila noticed something. "We're becoming a real forest concert. Think we'll need tickets soon?" Buster joked. But Henry was thinking, if word had reached other parts of the forest, what if it reached Bremen? He looked up at the stars. Was their journey really over? Or was this just the opening act? The next morning, golden light spilled through the trees as the band finished their breakfast of berries, toasted acorns, and forest tea. Finley, the fox, was already bouncing with energy, tapping rhythms on a log with 2 pine sticks. Rudy hummed new tunes into the breeze. Lila stretched and licked her paw with elegance. Buster snored a little with a half smile on his face. Henry sat outside the cottage, watching the path. He looked thoughtful. When the others joined him, he finally said, "What if we still went to Bremen?" Everyone looked up. "You mean the city?" Rudy tilted his head. "But we've got everything we need right here," said Buster. "A warm bed, food, fans, and an audience that doesn't throw tomatoes." Lila blinked slowly. "And trees. Don't forget the trees. Henry nodded. It's true. This place is perfect. But remember why we left? We wanted more than comfort. We wanted music to mean something. We wanted to share it. Finley's ears perked. My cousin said Bremen has a big summer festival every year. There's music, lights, even fireworks. Musicians from everywhere go to perform. Rudy flapped with excitement. Imagine that! Our band on a real stage! Lila narrowed her eyes playfully. With real pressure, Henry smiled. But we wouldn't be doing it alone. We'd do it as we always have together. The animals sat in silence for a moment. Then Buster said, Well, I've never been to a big city before. As long as no one expects me to wear shoes, I'm in, chirped Rudy. I'll start working on a city medley. Only if I get to nap in a velvet curtain backstage, added Lila. Finley twirled. Do you think Bremen has snacks? Henry laughed. Then it's decided. That afternoon, they packed. Buster rolled up blankets. Rudy polished their instruments, and a few shiny rocks. Lila collected her favorite smooth stones and nap pillow. Henry found a long stick to use as a walking staff and microphone stand. And Finley stuffed half a loaf of nut bread in his backpack, just in case. Before they left, they looked back at their little cottage, the stage of their first real performance, and the place where their music began. We'll come back, said Henry. This will always be home. And with that, the musicians of Bremen +1 Fox stepped onto the forest path once more. But now, their hooves and paws and wings didn't carry them towards something unknown. They carried them toward a dream that had only grown louder with every song. Toward Bremen, toward the big stage, toward their greatest performance yet. After 2 days of steady walking, hill climbing, and tail-chasing breaks, mostly from Finley, the forest began to thin out. The dirt path turned to cobblestones. The sound of rustling trees faded, replaced by laughter, clanking carts, and distant bells. They had arrived. Is this it? Rudy gasped, flying up to see over the rooftops. It's huge! The animals stood in awe. Bremen stretched before them with tall stone buildings, colorful market stalls, street musicians, and people in bright clothes bustling in every direction. Children ran past, chasing spinning tops. Horses trotted down the road, pulling carriages. Flags flapped in the wind from towers and windows. Finley's tail wagged. There must be snacks everywhere in this place. I smell roasted peanuts, said Buster, nose twitching. I smell city shoes, muttered Lila. Henry took a deep breath. All right, let's find out where we sign up for the festival. They made their way through the streets, drawing curious glances. Is that a donkey with a bell? Did that rooster just say doodle-doo jazz? Was that cat humming a lullaby? People pointed, laughed, and some even clapped. But not everyone was kind. Keep the animals off the square, barked one stern man in a tall hat. Shoo! Buster flinched. We're not pests. Henry gently guided them away. Come on, let's try the music hall. They passed a large wooden stage where human performers tuned their violins and flutes. A sign read, Bremen Festival of Music Performers check in here. Yeah! Henry approached the table where a thin, serious-looking woman sat with a clipboard. Hello, he said politely. We're here to register. She looked up and blinked. You're a donkey? Yes, said Henry. And these are my friends. We're a band. She raised an eyebrow. We don't usually allow animals in the festival. But we've performed in the forest, said Rudy. We have fans, added Finley. We scared off robbers, Buster blurted out. The woman blinked again. With music? Yes, Lila said, stepping forward with grace. We sing, we play, we believe in what we do. The woman looked unsure. Suppose there's room in the local curiosities corner. It's not the main stage, but you can perform there at sunset. Henry's eyes sparkled. Thank you. She handed them a paper badge. You'll be in the north corner stage, but don't cause a mess. As they walked away, Rudy whispered, Local curiosities? Sounds like a shelf in a dusty library. Henry smiled. Doesn't matter what they call us. Once we play, they'll remember our music, not our fur. Finley jumped. We're going to perform in Bremen, in front of people. Real people. And squirrels don't count? Lila teased. They found a quiet alley to rest and rehearse. Henry tapped a rhythm on cobblestones. Buster howled a gentle beat. Rudy riffed a jazzy melody. Lila hummed a dreamy tune. And Finley added a squeaky but proud toot on his pine cone horn. They were ready. Even if the city wasn't like... As the sun began to set over Bremen, golden light stretched across the rooftops and painted the cobblestone streets in warm tones. In the corner of the town square, a small wooden platform stood beneath a crooked sign that read, North Corner Stage, Local Curiosities. A few townsfolk wandered over, mostly out of curiosity. Some carried pastries, others brought benches, and a few children sat on the ground, legs crossed, wide-eyed. Henry peeked out from behind the curtain. Not a huge crowd, he said, but they look friendly. Better than squirrels throwing acorns, Rudy whispered. Lila curled her tail. Let's give them something beautiful. Finley adjusted his pinecone horn nervously. I hope they like Jazz Fox Fusion. Buster nodded. They'll like us. We're different. Then Henry took center stage and smiled. Good evening, Bremen, he said. We are the musicians of Bremen. Rudy gave a dramatic A1, A2, A, cluck, doodle, do. Henry stomped a steady beat. Buster held a harmony. Lila purred a smooth melody. And Finley gave a cheerful, squeaky solo. At first, the audience blinked. Then, someone laughed. Then, someone clapped. And then, the children began dancing. A woman swayed with her baby in her arms. A man tapped his cane to the rhythm. Even a merchant with flour on his apron began snapping to the beat. They were smiling. Really smiling. The music soared, and with every note, something in the air shimmered. Not magic, but joy. Real, warm, honest joy. But then, crack! A loud shout came from the edge of the square. What is this nonsense? Everyone turned. It was the man in the tall hat, the same one who had shooed them earlier. He was the town director of performances. Animals on a city stage? He growled. This is a joke. Henry stepped forward, still calm. We were invited. People are enjoying it. This isn't music, the man snapped. This is a circus act. The children booed. One of the bakers stood up. I'd rather hear this than another flute solo. Others nodded. Let them finish. But the man in the tall hat scowled. You have 5 minutes, then you're done. The animals glanced at one another. No one said a word. Then Henry whispered, Let's give them something they'll never forget. And so they did. The next piece was Gentle, a lullaby that Lila had once sung under moonlight, now joined by Rudy's soft harmonies and Finley's fluttering notes. Buster added a low, steady hum, and Henry, he simply stood and smiled as the crowd grew silent, listening. When they finished, the square stayed quiet for just a moment. And then applause, real loud clapping applause. Children stood. Parents whistled. Even the stern man looked slightly confused. Henry bowed. Thank you, Bremen. And behind the curtain, he said, We came, we played, and we belonged. But the night wasn't quite over. Because just then, behind the square, a familiar voice whispered in the shadows. Those are the animals who stole our cottage. The robbers had come to Bremen. The cheering in the town square was still echoing when Henry stepped off the stage. His heart beat fast not from fear, but from joy. They had done it. "We really played in Bremen," he said with a proud grin. "We really had fans!" Rudy flapped excitedly. "I counted at least 5 children clapping in rhythm," Finley added, holding up 4 paws and a tail. Lila simply purred, eyes half closed, and no one threw a single tomato. But just as they were packing up their instruments, Buster's ears perked. He sniffed the air, then frowned. "I smell trouble." From behind a wooden booth at the edge of the square, 3 shadowy figures stepped out, muddy coats, ragged boots, and crooked grins. "Well, well, well," said the tallest one. "Look who's famous now." Henry blinked. "Wait, I know those voices. They're the robbers," Rudy hissed. "The ones from the cottage." The second one cracked his knuckles. "We were just passing through town, and what do we see? Our old house filled with music and furry squatters." The third waved a finger. "You scared us once with that crazy noise trick. But this time, we're not falling for silly songs." Finley gulped. "What do we do?" "Don't panic," Henry said calmly. "Let's think." The robbers stepped closer. "You're coming with us," said the first one. "You owe us rent," Buster growled. "We owe you nothing. That house was abandoned. Still cozy though," said the third. "And now we want it back." The animals huddled. "We can't outrun them," said Rudy. "We can't outfight them," added Lila. "But maybe," Henry's eyes lit up, "we can outperform them." "Excuse me," Henry said, turning to the robbers. "Would you gentlemen care to settle this on stage?" They blinked. "What?" "A performance showdown," Henry explained. "If the crowd likes your act better, we'll leave the cottage. But if we win, you disappear for good." The robbers exchanged confused glances. "You're on." "Wait, what?" whispered Finley. "They don't have instruments." "They don't need them," Lila said with a smirk. "They have egos." The town director of performances, overhearing the commotion, crossed his arms. "This should be interesting." The robbers took the stage first. They howled, clanged pots, kicked barrels, and tried to rap badly. One of them slipped and landed in a pie. The children laughed not with joy, but with second-hand embarrassment. Then it was the animals' turn. Henry gave the count. Rudy opened with a jazzy whistle. Buster barked in rhythm. Lila sang a soft but strong melody. And Finley added playful horn flourishes between verses. The music rose into the evening sky, cheerful, real, full of heart. When the last note ended, there was a pause. And then the loudest applause yet. The director stood up. "The decision is clear." "Ugh," groaned the robbers. The tallest one muttered, "I knew we should have practiced." They slipped off into the shadows for good this time. As the crowd chanted, "Encore! Encore!" and tossed bits of fruit, the good kind, the animals smiled. They had faced danger not with teeth or claws, but with music, laughter, and teamwork. And the city of Bremen loved them for it. 0.5? The stars twinkled above Bremen, and the city square still buzzed with excitement. Children danced with ribbons, adults tapped their feet, and merchants offered pastries to the musicians like they were royalty. Finley had 3 cookies stuffed in his cheeks. Rudy was signing a leaf with berry ink for a fan. Lila sat tall on a wooden box, letting a toddler pet her head. Buster sniffed each person's shoes like a true security officer. And Henry? He simply stood in the middle of it all, smiling quietly. Then came a voice from behind. "Ahem," said the town director of performances. "Excuse me, musicians." They turned to see the tall man still with his stiff hat, but now holding a rolled scroll tied with a golden ribbon. He cleared his throat. "After thorough reconsideration," and an impressive number of applause counts, the festival committee would like to formally invite you to remain in Bremen as official town musicians. The animals froze. Wait, you mean like real city performers? Rudy blinked. With costumes, gasped Finley. With velvet curtains and shiny buttons? Added Lila. The man nodded stiffly. You'd perform at festivals, school events, holiday parades. You'd live in a music hall apartment and... Buster tilted his head. But what about the forest? Henry stepped forward. May we have a moment to talk? Of course, said the man. But be quick, the mayor wants a photo. The animals gathered in a circle under the glow of lanterns. Well, said Rudy, this is what we dreamed about, right? A big stage, said Finley, and cookies everywhere. Lila purred thoughtfully. It's tempting. But we'd be leaving the trees, Buster said. The quiet, the little house we fixed. Henry looked at them all. We came to Bremen because we wanted to be more than forgotten animals. And now, we're not forgotten, they nodded. We could stay here, he said gently, and we'd be happy. But, Rudy added, we could also keep playing wherever we go. Cities, forests, fields, wherever someone needs a song, Lila whispered. Henry smiled. Then maybe our journey isn't over yet. They turned back to the town director. Sir, said Henry kindly, we're honored, truly, but we're not ready to stop moving just yet. You're declining? He asked. We're choosing the road, said Buster. The surprise concerts, added Rudy. The naps under oak trees, said Lila. The traveling snack reviews, shouted Finley. The director blinked, then slowly smiled. Very well, he said. Then Bremen will always have a stage for you, anytime you return. The crowd around them clapped again, not for a performance, but for a choice. A choice to keep playing not just in the world, but with it. The animals packed their things, waved goodbye, and as they left the city gates at sunrise, Finley looked back one last time. So, where to next? Henry grinned. Wherever there's music waiting to be made. And with that, the band played a gentle tune as they walked a song of friendship, freedom, and the joy of never standing still. The road after Bremen was quiet and gentle. The breeze carried the smell of flowers, the sun was warm, and the animals were in high spirits. They sang as they walked. Henry tapped his hooves. Buster hummed and howled in harmony. Rudy tried to sing backward just for fun. Lila purred soft bass note. Finley played his pine cone horn while marching sideways. They were a parade of joy. By late afternoon, they spotted a village up ahead, a small place with crooked roofs, dusty windows, and not a single sound. No music, no laughter, no smiles. What a quiet place, said Rudy, fluttering down from a tree. Finley sniffed the air. I don't even smell any soup. Maybe it's nap time, suggested Buster, but Lila looked closer. Look at their faces. An old woman stared out from a window, her eyes tired. A boy sat on a step, chin in hands, barely blinking. A shopkeeper swept the same spot over and over without looking up. Everything and everyone seemed gray. This place feels heavy, Henry said softly, like they forgot how to be happy. They need a song, whispered Lila. But would they even listen? Asked Rudy. Henry took a step forward. We'll find out. The band set up in the center of the square, a few boxes for seats, a barrel for Finley to stand on, and Rudy made a music stand out of sticks and a bent spoon. At first, no one noticed, but then Henry began to tap his hoof. Buster added a quiet woof-woof rhythm. Rudy played a bright little melody. Lila's purr rose gently through the air, and Finley, eyes closed, let out a cheerful toot on his horn. One window opened, then another. A little girl peeked out and gasped, Animals? Playing music? Soon, more villagers gathered shy, silent, unsure. The music grew louder, warmer. The band played a forest tune, a jazzy jump, and a sleepy lullaby turned into a bouncing dance beat. And something began to change. The shopkeeper tapped his broom. The old woman smiled. The little boy clapped in time. And then people danced. They twirled in the streets, laughed for the first time in weeks, and clapped so loudly that birds joined in just to be part of the sound. When the last song faded, the mayor stepped forward with tears in his eyes. "We've had a hard season," he said. "Sickness, sadness, silence. But today, you reminded us how to feel again." Henry bowed. "Sometimes, all it takes is a song." They were offered beds, soup, even medals made of bread. But the band politely declined. "Thank you," said Buster. "But the road calls." "Besides," Rudy said with a wink, "we have another town to surprise." As they left the village, the sound of people singing echoed behind them. Henry smiled. "I think Bremen isn't the only place that needed us." The next day, the sky began to change. Gray clouds crept across the horizon. The wind grew restless, tugging at leaves and tails. Thunder grumbled far away like a sleepy giant waking up. Henry glanced upward. "We should find shelter soon." "I don't like that sky," Buster said, flattening his ears. Rudy flew in slow, circling loops. "There's a barn! I see it just past the hill." The animals hurried along the muddy path. Raindrops began to fall, soft at first, then faster. Soon the road was slippery, and the trees danced wildly in the wind. By the time they reached the barn, they were soaked to the fur and feathers. Henry nudged the big wooden door open. Inside, the barn was quiet, dusty, and dark but dry. "Phew," said Finley, shaking himself like a mop. "That was a splash concert." "Everyone all right?" asked Henry, checking each friend. "All paws accounted for," said Buster. Lila hopped onto a stack of hay and licked her wet fur. "Not my favorite kind of weather." Thunder boomed, lightning flashed, rain roared on the rooftop. They were safe, but the storm outside was loud and scary. Finley curled up near a barrel. "Kind of feels lonely in here." Rudy perched on a beam. "Too quiet." Henry looked around. "Then let's do what we do best." He tapped a slow rhythm with his hoof on the barn floor. Clip, clop, clip, clop. Buster added a soft thump with his tail. Rudy hummed a windy melody, matching the rhythm of the rain. Lila purred low and steady, like distant thunder. Finley joined last, blowing into his pine cone horn with a gentle, breathy toot. The barn lit up not with light, but with sound. Sound that made the dark less frightening. Sound that turned cold air into something warm. Sound that reminded them, we're not alone. Outside, the wind raged. Inside, the animals played a lullaby for the night. And something magical happened. Tiny barn mice peeked out from the walls. A sleepy owl blinked down from the rafters. Even a pair of scared little lambs from the nearby field wandered in following the sound of the music. They all gathered in a cozy circle around the band. Lila leaned against a haystack and sighed. "Now this is the kind of audience I like." The music slowed. Rudy added a final soft trill, like a whisper. The storm began to fade. And when the thunder finally stopped, the barn was filled not with silence, but peace. That night, they didn't just sleep. They dreamed of songs that could build bridges, grow trees, light fires, and calm storms. Because by now, they all knew. Their music wasn't just a performance. It was a gift. Morning came gently. Sunlight peeked through the cracks in the barn walls. The storm had passed, leaving the world fresh and quiet, like a page waiting to be written on. Henry stretched his legs with a deep breath. Buster yawned and rolled over in the hay. Rudy blinked at the sunrise and chirped a soft scale. Lila purred, already grooming her perfectly curled tail. Finley opened one eye and whispered, "Can we do that again sometime?" They shared a smile. "Do what?" asked Buster. "Make the dark feel bright." Henry nodded. "We do that every time we play." The lambs had left. The mice had scurried off. The owl had returned to its tree. But something had stayed behind, a feeling, not just of safety, not just of music, but of purpose. Later that day, as they packed up and stepped outside, the world sparkled, the grass greener, the sky clearer, the road ahead full of promise. "Where to now?" asked Rudy, stretching his wings. Henry looked out at the winding road. "Anywhere we're needed." Lila leapt lightly from a log. "Anywhere a child is frowning, or a town is too quiet," added Buster. "Or a tree just looks lonely." Finley grinned. And so they walked, 5 friends, 5 sounds, 1 band. Not searching for fame, not chasing applause, just following the road, the rhythm, and their hearts. As they disappeared over the hill, their song floated through the air, cheerful, warm, and full of life. Hee-haw, woof-woof, cock-a-jazz-a-doo, meow so soft, and a foxhorn too. If you're sad or lonely, just look our way. The Bremen Band will brighten your day. Because in every corner of the world, from cities to forests, from farms to fields, there's always room for a little more kindness and a little more music. The end.